G'day everyone and welcome to the Brett Lee podcast. I'm your host Brett Lee. Brad McNamara Buzzard is with me. We are topical, whatever happens, and what has happened in the last 24, 48 hours. Shit has hit the fan with Cricket Australia, with Justin Langer. There's been people throwing mud everywhere. We're going to get the facts. We thought we'd jump in the studio, so this is the reason why on Monday evening we're doing the podcast. How are you? What the hell has happened?
Yeah, g'day Bingo. Hello to everyone out there. Yes, well, what has happened is what we all knew was going to happen 6 months ago. And the question is, why has it taken so long? And why did the shit have to hit the fan, as you say, as badly as it has? Lot to unpack. Let's rip in.
Around about 48 hours ago, Justin Langer was offered a 6-month contract. Had to go in, had some pretty intense conversations with Cricket Australia. They offered him a 6-month contract, which they probably knew he wasn't going to accept. He walked away thinking that I would like a lot more in terms of a lot more stability, a longer-term contract. They've offered him something that he didn't want to accept. But the situation now where he's put a contract out, or he put a statement out rather, to say this is what's happened and this is where we're at.
It was an insult, 6 months extension. They knew he wasn't going to accept that. And if reports are to be believed, it was offering him a 6-month contract so he could go out in a high. We just won the World Cup and the Ashes. The only thing that could happen by offering him a 6-month World Cup contract is that we don't retain the T20 World Cup. That's hardly going out in the high. That was an insult. They knew he was going to reject that. That was an invitation for him to say, I'm resigning.
Yep. And the fact that that short amount of contract, that 6 month, as you mentioned, he was never going to accept that. So Cricket Australia...
They knew that.
They knew that. So let's take it back about 12 months ago. We went 12 months ago where there was a lot of speculation that there was a rift in the team environment. When I say the team environment, not between the players, but between some of the senior players and the coach, some senior staff members as well, that Justin Langer was too intense. I want to say on the record here that I'm a mate of Justin Langer's. I think he's been a terrific person. He's been a wonderful teammate. I don't know in terms of his coaching because he's never coached me as a player, but there's been that speculation that he's been too intense, and we'll get to his statement in a second. So if this has been known for 12 months, 6 months, as you mentioned, they did a wonderful job to win the T20 World Cup. They won and retained the Ashes twice in 2019 and 2021-22. The writing was on the wall. We're at the situation now where the Ashes is finished. Australia win 4-0. Should he have gone, you know what, they're not going to have me moving forward. I know where there's a bullet in the chamber. This is my time to go. Has he held on too long? Should he have been fired? Should he have been told that this is a swan song, get out after the Ashes, and we wouldn't be in this situation right now?
Well, I reckon you go back to the 2019 Ashes. There were reports of meltdowns and Justin Langer being way too intense. That documentary they did, the test, bore that out. I know Brad Haddon and Steve Waugh and Ricky Ponting at various stages were brought in as buffers to Justin's intensity. And then 6 months ago, before the World Cup, there was a crisis meeting. Basically, there was a mutiny. The players, approached Cricket Australia, and this is what, obviously we weren't there, but this is what we're going on as being presented as facts, where they said we can't have him as coach. And you remember too, we'll get to Pat Cummins in a minute. Pat Cummins isn't captain at this stage.
Correct.
At that stage, Tim Payne is captain
Yep.
through 2019. So it's not Tim Payne, it's the senior players have basically said to Cricket Australia, we can't handle this guy as captain. And then, once again, Justin's been pushed, as we're led to believe, to the back of the dressing room. That might not be
as
the
a
way.
coach, yeah.
As a coach, to take a back seat and let the assistant coaches take over. We win the T20 World Cup. We flog England in the Ashes. My son could have coached Australia to win, with all due respect, against that England team in the Ashes. So the intensity part is gone. This has been festering for a long, long time. Now, if Cricket Australia knew they didn't want, and in consultation with the senior players, and not just the senior players, but other staff as well, coaching staff, who we're led to believe were going to resign, if Justin held on to his position. If they knew this a long time ago, they should have given him the opportunity at the start of the season to say, listen, Justin, we're not going to renew your contract. We're going to give you a chance to go out in a high. The end of the Ashes, thanks very much for all your service. That would have been the perfect way to finish it. Now, the two things that have happened here that have gone wrong is Cricket Australia have stuffed that up by not offering him that. And I don't think Justin's read the room correctly. And that's part of his intensity in his character, not to give up on things that he's hung on thinking.
The tenacity of him as a player.
Bugger you, I'm not going to give up. You know, I'm going to keep going.
Which is why he was such a fantastic player for Australia, over 100 tests. The fact that he never gave his wicket away, he always bunkered down. He was always against, players trying to take his spot. Bowlers trying to bowl quick, knock his head off. But Justin Langer found a way to fight through. And I think that, as what you're saying too, that tenacity, that never say die attitude, then he thought he has to implement that as a coach. The other thing too is that there's been a lot of stuff said about Pat Cummins, and the senior players should have come out. No one has come out and publicly backed Justin Langer. We'll get to that in a second. Cricket Australia, they offered the 6-month contract. Justin Langer feels as if that no one's backed him up. Cricket Australia have given him something that's a kick in the teeth for what he's achieved. Let's have a look at his record. Here's the facts.
Yes.
So
it's important to present the facts.
Correct. 22 tests as the Australian cricket coach. Men's. 15 test wins, 7 losses. I will point out that out of those 15 wins, Buzz, 6 were day-night tests in Australia.
Which we're the king of. We haven't lost one.
And Mitchell Starc has got the best record as the pink ball bowler. Phenomenal record, over 50 wickets. 47 ODIs as coach, 25 wins and 22 losses.
So around 50%.
Yep.
Bit better, just a little bit better, ticking over a little bit better than 50%.
T20 cricket, 53 games, 26 wins and 25 losses.
Once again, around that 50%. So when you look at that, it's hardly a huge... 6 months, last 6 months have been fantastic. Yes, we won the T20 World Cup. Never done that before. Fantastic. Big tick. We won the Ashes 4-0. England haven't won a test here since 2010-11. And we're led to believe that the Justin took a back seat in terms of the intensity and the coaching in those two. So, yes, his record's probably a pass, I would say, in that time. But the fact that we're even talking in what the coach's record is...
Is it too important? Is there so much emphasis on the Australian cricket coach? I mean, we're not English Premier League. Is there too much importance on the Australian cricket coach?
Absolutely. It's become way too important. I don't know.
I think there is.
This isn't... Remember, this isn't Justin Langer's cricket team.
I think there's way too much importance.
And somewhere along the line, it's been built up. This is Justin Langer's cricket team. There's been a lot of emotion with the ex-players who are teammates of his. You're one of them, coming out very strongly about it. But people remember, it's not Justin Langer's cricket team. It wasn't Bob Simpson's cricket team. When Mark Taylor came in,
or John Buchanan,
and had a fair bit to do with moving Bob Simpson on, because
Yep.
he didn't need that sort. Tubby didn't need that sort. Or it wasn't John Buchanan's. It wasn't Darren Lehman's. It wasn't Tim Nielsen's. It wasn't Mickey Arthur's. Mickey Arthur wasn't there that long. At some stage in the last 3 or 4 years, I got the feeling this became Justin Langer's cricket team. And what I really loved about this summer was you could tell this was Pat Cummins'
Yep.
cricket team, and it was the players' cricket team. They stepped up, and they were the ones making the decision. Remember the ridiculous situation a couple of years ago? We had Darren Lehman run out onto the MCG to declare an innings closed. When did the coach become? When did the coach start declaring innings?
Have that ability to run out and declare. Imagine doing that to Steve Waugh.
Yeah, so I think that needs to be, amongst all the emotion that's been going on in the last few days, and there's been plenty of it. I mean, Mitchell Johnson has come off the long run, basically.
Too hard?
Way too hard. Ripping into Pat Cummins. I mean, we'll get to the players in a minute. We're talking facts. It's not. So that record, that's Justin Langer's coaching record, but it's actually not his record. It's the Australian cricket team's record.
Correct.
He's just been coached when that's happened.
I will point out one thing here, Buzz. Australia, under the leadership and qualities of Justin Langer, have got to the number one test ranking team in the world. Okay?
Yep.
Put that aside for a second. They've also won for the first time ever under the leadership of Justin Langer, the coach, have won the first ever T20 World Cup. They've also won and retained the Ashes in 19 and 2021/22. So if you're Justin Langer and you're sitting back and you're looking at these stats, he's going, well, hang on.
Yep.
I've taken this team.
And
my
remember,
team,
remember why he got appointed.
Yep. After he's come in an absolute shitstorm.
Yep.
After the Sandpaper Gate and what happened over in South Africa, he's then had to rebuild the team, rebuild the trust of the Australian cricket team, which I think he has done. You know, the team is now in a stronger position than it was 4 years ago. Is that due to Justin Langer or is it due to the senior players stepping up? I think it's a bit of both.
Well, obviously a bit of both, and I think initially probably if you had to weight it, more Justin Langer and Tim Payne has to get a rap for that as well.
Yep.
You know, they had to rebuild all that, as you said, but I think the problem was that the transition from that period where, you know, things were as low as they could get, and things rebuilt fairly quickly. You know, we had that great series against India, and somewhere along the line though, that intensity didn't drop off, and Justin didn't read the room, because if the players still wanted him there, and the coaching staff and everyone else still wanted him there, he'd be there.
Yep. That's it. That's the whole crux
That's
of what
the bottom
it is.
line.
We've spoken about his achievements, got the team back to the number one test team in the world, won the first ever T20 World Cup for Australia, Ashes 19 and 21/22. We keep talking about, and you made a very good point before the break, that if the team, the senior players, the support staff, Cricket Australia, if they wanted Justin Langer to continue, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about that. He would have just gone straight in, got another 3-year contract. Thanks very much. Now, that clearly isn't the case. So there's been some friction. Maybe has Justin Langer rubbed the people the wrong way with his intensity and with trying to put the pressure back on the players to make them better players? Has he gone too hard at the players, Buzz? Has he stuck his neck out too far and the players have gone, well, hang on, this isn't your team. It's way too intense. We can't continue to go on with this, and that's the reason why we haven't come out and backed you.
Yeah, and obviously his intensity is a problem, and Justin even acknowledged that in his statement. He apologised if at times I've been too intense. Now, I don't know if that apology is a
Was it tongue in cheek? Actually,
is it a bit of a backhander to the players to say you guys can't handle the truth or you're too soft?
Well, have
you got it there?
Let me just read out. I'll read part of his quote because his quotes, in terms of the letter to Cricket Australia, is quite long, and we have it here. But I'll pick one thing out which I think is very important. My life, this is Justin Langer, my life has been built on values of honesty, respect, trust, truth, and performance. And if that comes across as too intense, in inverted commas, at times, I apologise.
Yeah, it's an interesting comment.
What's he saying there?
Well, you could read that a number of ways. You could just take it at face value, that maybe that's exactly how he feels. But I'm reading that as a little bit of a that was the criticism and the great knock on him, that he was too intense. And it seems like in his coaching career,
Is he saying that players are too soft?
I reckon he is. And at the beginning, he was really close to the players, and at the end he ended up a long way from the players. It seems like he could never get into the right position with them. So he was too close, he was too intense. They pushed him away. And at the end, they pushed him up to the back of the, to the rooms, not to the back of the room, but, to the stage where, to a point where he obviously didn't enjoy being. So I think there's two things we need to look at, Binga, is first we need to have a look at this from the players' point of view, because they've copped a bit of criticism. They've copped a fair bit of criticism, and I think Pat Cummins has copped really unfair criticism. Cricket Australia have thrown Pat Cummins under the bus by putting him in a position where he had to comment and ask questions about the coach. It was just completely unfair. What's Pat Cummins supposed to say? Sorry, guys, we don't really want him as coach, but he's got our full support. knowing that there's a board meeting the next day?
Yeah, you can't bullshit to the Australian public, right?
Well, so
And
Pat
that
Cummins
wasn't Pat Cummins' position to do that. I know that
Exactly.
he's the Australian captain. And the other thing too is that when you look at who picks the teams, George Bailey, the chairman, Tony Dottermaid, and Justin Langer.
He was a selector. So players are going to come out and say, listen, we don't really enjoy Justin's style of coaching. Essentially shitbagging his coaching, knowing he's a selector. Good luck getting picked in the.
Well, if he continues for that 6-month contract,
So that's the first thing cricketers have to do. The coach can't be a selector.
coach cannot be a selector.
I don't ever remember that working. I can't see.
Agreed.
Did you have a situation where a coach was a selector?
No, look, I mean, with John Buchanan, I think he had a bit of an inkling as to what he believed the team, but it came down to the captain. If Steve Waugh wanted a certain player in, he'd present that and say, it was Steve Waugh's team, it was Ricky Ponting's team. You know, these great captains that I had the pleasure to play under, they're out there in the battlefield. The team's not being run or being picked in the back of the dressing room. It's the guys on the field. Now, I think what makes a great coach is a great man manager, someone that can support the players, someone that can be there for the players. And it's very hard as a player to go to a coach, if he's a selector, to go to a coach and say, hey, I'm not feeling really good today. You know, my mental health's not great. I've got issues at home. I'm not really sort of feel like I'm on
bowling
top of the
shit.
game.
I'm not hitting them well. I'm struggling.
My body's sore. My ankle's killing me. You know, I just don't feel right.
I'm going to give you 10 reasons not to pick me.
You are not going to do that. So what's the coach there for then? So the coach has to be separated from that selection committee or panel, so that the player does feel comfortable going to the coach, who should be as I said, like a man manager, but also a friend, someone they can go and talk to. Because the tours are long, mate. The tours are, these guys are away for close to 250 to 280 days a year. It's a long, long time. So I think someone like a Justin Langer as a coach could have been a great asset for someone to go and say, let's work on this with my batting because I'm struggling, or with the bowling type of thing. But you can't do that when he picks the teams.
Well, let me ask you about a great man of both of ours. You played a lot of cricket with him, Mitchell Johnson, calling Pat Cummins gutless. What are your thoughts?
Well, I sort of read that and I was like, well, that's a big statement. And I'm mates with Mitchell Stark. Mitchell Johnson, I should say. I'm mates with Mitchell Stark as well. But Mitchell Johnson, terrific fella. Pat Cummins, terrific fella. I don't think that's a fair comment on Pat Cummins because of the reasons why we said Pat Cummins can't come out. And if the belief was deep down that the players didn't essentially want Justin Langer around because they wanted to go with a new direction, they use all this different unity and all these bullshit terms that I think, at the end of the day...
They used a lot of buzzwords, didn't they? Cricket Australia, which I found gutless.
Yes.
That was the gutless thing.
Yeah.
If anyone's been gutless in all this,
it's Cricket Australia.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
no one's won here, mate. No, everyone's come out looking horrible.
Yeah.
So Justin Langer could have had the opportunity to have 4 great years as an Australian coach, and as I said, Test Team of the Year. Number 1 Test team, won the T20 World Cup this year and the Ashes. Right, retained twice over 2 periods. He could have walked away, all high and mighty, done a great job,
and should have
had that
and was treated
respect from Cricket Australia and been backed. Now, Cricket Australia
Badly.
haven't done that.
No.
Right? But I think with Mitchell Johnson to come and say that Pat's gutless because he hasn't come out and publicly backed him, I don't think Pat Cummins, it's not his role to come out and publicly back the coach because of those reasons that we mentioned before.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that criticism should have been levelled at Cricket Australia, which a lot of it has. A lot of the ex-players, Steve Waugh, who else is Ricky Ponting, called it embarrassing.
Yep. Mark Taylor's come out.
There seems to be talk of a rift between the ex-players and the current players, but I don't agree with that. I don't think there's a rift either. I mean, as an ex-player, you would have been dropped. You don't get a 6-month farewell. When you get dropped as a player, you just get told you're dropped.
What about Marcus Harris?
I mean, all those guys we talked about, everyone, you haven't lived, you haven't played cricket until you've been dropped. So why would Justin Langer deserve any, why should that be treated any differently? Granted, he was treated poorly, and he has been treated poorly. He wouldn't be a person in Australia, I don't think.
No, he's been treated very, very poorly from Cricket Australia.
Yeah, the way this has happened. Should he have been re-signed as coach? That's another question. If you believe if the players didn't want him and the staff, well, no, he probably shouldn't have been. But then that brings in another argument: are the players too powerful? Should they be saying who they want as coach? And if a guy is a little bit too intense,
do they need a coach?
I don't think they need. I think they need someone that you mentioned before. They've done perfectly fine. We're winning the World Cup and winning the Ashes with Andrew McDonald and Michael DiVenuto are the assistant coaches, just providing the support that the team needs. I'm of the great view that the captain and the players, senior players and the players run the cricket team. The coach is there to make sure they're ready to go. They've got what they need in terms of preparation. Obviously, you've got your medical staff and your physios and your coaches. All that's organised. To me, that's the coach's job. The coach shouldn't be, have a whiteboard out before each session saying this is where the field's going to be. You're going to bowl 5 overs, then come off. Then we're going to bring this bloke on for which is what I saw last year against India. I didn't see that this year.
Yep.
We didn't see any of that. We didn't have any of those, hardly any of those discussions.
And is that
year.
A credit to Pat Cummins?
Absolutely, because you can tell he's now, and the players, the senior players, seem to be running that cricket team. It looked to me last year like that was being done from the dressing room. Someone was holding a whiteboard up saying, get him off, put him on now. The tactics didn't change. We didn't adapt to things. I think it's very unfair criticism on Pat Cummins and any of the players. Luckily, not many of them were put in that position to have to comment on that. Pat fronted up. And if anything, I've got greater respect for Pat Cummins holding the line and not caving in. It would have been easy for him to try and weasel his way out and say, "Oh no, I sort of half backing him," and but he stayed strong and stayed true to his beliefs, and his loyalty and allegiance should be to his teammates. And if he knows that they don't want a certain person as coach,
that's a good point. So here's a hypothetical: if Pat Cummins does come out because Cricket Australia roll him out and say, right, we want you to take the bullet, going to roll you out. You have to say that, look, of course, and it's that standard function line that a lot of people say, look, he's been a terrific coach, he's done a great job, of course he's got the backing of all his players, knowing deep down that he probably hasn't. And then Pat has to go back to the team and they go, hang on, you've just gone out and said that we back him 100%, but between the team, for whatever reason, they haven't backed him 100%, which is fine too, and that's nothing to do with Justin Langer as a person. It may be style of coaching.
And remember, this is the day before he knows the board's probably going to make the decision they made. And by the way, who on that board, why is the board making that decision? Ben Oliver and the board, who's been in a cricket dressing room before?
How many times have they been there for the whole test?
And would have known the dynamic, when things... Why are they making those decisions? So whoever's making these decisions, that's something that needs to be looked at as well. I don't know who, it's easy to point out problems. It's nice to point out solutions, but someone like Ben Oliver, I don't know much about him. I don't know what his background is. I don't know how he's qualified to A, pick selectors for the Australian side and B, pick the coach or advise on the coach for the Australian side to the board. There's not much cricket expertise on the board of Cricket Australia.
That's spot on. And that has to be.
So
you have to have that expertise for these moments to go, hang on.
Exactly. So when I come to you, if you're on the board and you've never been to cricket, and I say that the coach is too intense, what's that mean?
They go, well, what happens? Is he too intense in terms of the way he fronts the media? I think, Buzz, with what's happened, so in a perfect world, we believe what should have happened was Justin Langer, he knew 6 months ago that he didn't have the backing of the players. There are a couple of, from what we're reading and what we're hearing from the players, through different avenues.
And all credit to him, he tried to turn it around.
He tried to turn it around.
But it was too late.
But for whatever reason, a few of the staff as well were finding it hard to work with Justin Langer with his coaching methods, right? And maybe, as they said, they keep using the word too intense. Justin Langer should have seen the writing on the wall. he should have gone, right, okay, I want to go out after this year, 2022, after test, what we've discussed. Done. Cricket Australia back in. They go, right, you've had a fantastic 4 years. You got the team back to test number one, won the T20 World Cup, won the Ashes. Thanks very much. Terrific. Go. We'll look to someone else now, right? They haven't done that. Cricket Australia have made a monumental stuff up with not putting the bullet in the chamber and going, right, that's it. This is the end point. They've let it fester on. They've had to get to a situation now where they're trying to sort of get the players to come out and say some stuff and do the hard work that Cricket Australia, they haven't done the heavy lifting here, Buzz. They had to commit to that end point and say that this is where Justin Langer has to go. They offer him a token contract, which is disrespectful to Justin Langer as a person, as a coach. And now we're in a situation where every single entity looks ridiculous. There's mud flung at Pat Cummins, there's mud flung at Justin Langer, and then obviously with Cricket Australia have had the mud thrown on. They're going to make a statement, what I believe, I think tomorrow, which will be Tuesday morning. This is when probably the podcast will come out Tuesday morning, where it's late Monday night here. They have to make a statement because there's been so much written. It's been in the paper the last 2 days straight, front page, back page.
Yeah, well, I keep going back to Ricky Ponting's comment. It's been embarrassing. It's a black eye in the game. It reeks of the whole management of this thing has been totally reactive instead of being proactive and doing the things as you suggested to get on top of this before this, because you wouldn't need to be a genius to work out at some stage the players are going to get asked about this, and it's not the players' position to be. It would have been unfair to put them in that position, and unfortunately, Pat ended up in that position, and he ends up wearing a bit of mud. Guys like Mitch Johnson, who's they're all passionate people. There's a lot of passion and emotion surrounding this.
That's healthy. And I think they're trying to look after his mate, thinking that he's been
your ex-teammates. I
love Justin Langer. He's a terrific guy, right?
And would put up, and you'd expect that of them. But I think
this is someone's job, though. This is not an attack on them as a person. This is his role as a cricket coach of Australia.
Okay, Mickey Arthur got the flick. Tim Nielsen got the flick before him.
John Buchanan
got the flick. Darren Lehman. I think Darren Lehman stood down, but I'm not sure how much longer he would have lasted or would have wanted to go. It happens to.
He probably got the tap as well, right?
Yeah, maybe he probably did. It's part of the part of the landscape, and
are we talking too much about it? Is there been too much written? I think he's, as we keep saying, he's been handled atrociously.
Yep.
Justin Langer didn't need to go out that way.
Yep.
Should have gone out on a high and hasn't, unfortunately, which is not good for him and not good for his family to have that stuff written about you.
No.
But all that aside, where do we go now? Where does Cricket Australia go now? They'll make a comment tomorrow, we believe. But who's next in line? Who's the next Australian cricket coach, and what does he or she have to do?
Well, I'd like to see them learn their lessons from the last few years into the role. Firstly, the role of the coach of the Australian cricket team. This is are the players too powerful as a talk for another moment? They are very powerful.
It's another podcast.
It's probably another podcast. But they should be consulted. What do you need? Pat Cummins, I enjoyed Ian Chappell's article. He's the other day saying, do you even need a coach? Now, he's always been anti-coaches, Chappelli, but I'd like to see it get back to a bit more a man-manager style person as a coach, and not someone who owns the side or owns the results, or it's not, I don't know, who's in the frame, Trevor Baylis's team or Andrew McDonald's team or whoever else that might be in the frame to do the job. I'd like to see, I can't see how the coach can be a selector anymore. I think that's got to stop.
Yep, agreed.
I'd like to see that given the ask straight away. Do we have one coach that does 3 formats? Is something needs to be, is it too hard to be a test match coach, the one-day coach, the T20 coach? I'm not sure about that either. They're such vastly different formats now.
Well, we have 3 formats, as you mentioned. As a player, you don't necessarily play all 3 formats. Used to. The test player was in the one-day team, but then they realised, hang on, there are people suited better to test cricket. There are people suited better to T20 cricket or even one-day cricket. Can we have three coaches?
Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the captaincy in the three formats. Aaron Finch is probably closer to the end of the career. You know, he will defend the T20 World Cup and is our one-day captain at the moment. How much longer will he go for? Now, will we go back to having? Will Pat Cummins play in all three formats and be the one captain? I don't know. I think someone like, look, I'm a little bit biased here. I'll put my cards on the table. I think someone like Trevor Bayliss would be a fantastic.
Yep, I've played under Trevor Bayliss, as you have.
Yeah, and I play. Yeah.
Well, why?
Because I think he's the sort of guy who doesn't like. It's not about. It's not about him. I think he's a laid back character. I think it's exactly what Australian cricket needs at the moment. We don't need a Alex Ferguson rah type coach at the moment. We've got a new captain and senior leadership in the team, which is going really well. We just need someone to help them along,
to complement it,
to actually get out of the way and just let them play.
So they don't want a yes man, and they also don't want someone that's at the other end of the scale that's just crazy off the Richter.
And
I'm not saying that Justin Langer was, but I'm saying that they're the two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
Now, if you look at the way that Trevor Bayliss has coached every single team he's coached has been successful.
Yep.
Right from
New South Wales, Sri Lanka,
over to Sri Lanka, over to Kolkata Knight Riders, where I played under him.
Yep.
England, he's done it. He
dusted us up in the Ashes.
He turned that around.
Yep.
And I think it's because, as you mentioned, it's not about Trevor Bayliss. I mean, he's the guy that goes under the radar.
I'll tell you what he has
supports the team.
He's got a very good bullshit detector, TB.
Yeah.
He's. I won't say he's not a spreadsheet guy. He'll take notice of stats, and he's not. He's not ignorant to that sort of stuff. But he's got a really good feel for the game, and for just letting guys play and getting out of the way is probably just as important for the coaches as getting in the way, and the players as well. They obviously like Andrew McDonald. I mean, the team's done well under Andrew McDonald and Michael DiVenuto, and that's set up at the moment. I don't know whether they may consider just running with that at the moment. I think there has to be one person accountable and in charge of all that.
Well, Andrew McDonald has jumped in as the interim coach because he was definitely next in line as being the assistant coach. So he's just steady the ship whilst.
Yeah, so Australia plays against Sri Lanka on
Yep.
Friday, and these 5 T20s. So he'll be running the show there. So I think it needs to be that sort of character. I think we need to reset the expectations of the coach and what their role is, and so we don't get into this sort of situation again. I mean, it's always going to be hard when you've got an ex-player and who's just been inducted into the Hall of Fame like Justin Langer. So when someone like that gets the axe or is treated like Justin was treated, it's always going to make a bigger noise than when, for instance, with Tim Nielsen or Mickey Arthur or someone or John Buchanan.
Yep.
Not saying they deserve any better, or worse, but it's just the way it is because of Justin's the loyalty of his ex-teammates and the emotion that it brought up. So I'd like to see the whole thing reset in that regard, and I do like that. I like what Trevor Bayliss brings to the table. I don't know if he wants to do it. I don't know if he's interested. I don't know if they're going to do one of these searches around the world, which they tend to do.
It's a big commitment. The other thing too, Justin Langer also has been locked out of his home state.
Exactly.
I think the last 6 months.
Yep.
So he's only going home to see his wife and his girls now, which is obviously it's tough being away. It's tough being away as a player. It's tough being away as a coach.
It's a 300-day-a-year commitment, isn't it? It's a big job.
Interesting to see what happens. And that question too, I should have said at the start, was thanks to David. He asked that question about who will.
What would you like to see
Justin
happen
Langer
for the coach? I mean, you played a lot of Test cricket, 300 Test wickets, 300 one-day wickets. What worked best for you, firstly, and looking at where our cricket is now? What would you like to see happen?
A coach, to me, as I said before, has got to be a person, I think, that is away from a selection point of view. So there's no interference there, right? First and foremost. Got to be a great mentor, person you can go to for a cup of tea or a beer at night to say, hey, I'm struggling in these regions, maybe at home, maybe the ankle sore, maybe, you're not playing the shots or the technique's not quite right. a friend. A coach has got to be a friend. And what makes a great coach is someone where you can go to and ask these questions without feeling the repercussions of something's going to happen down the line because, if someone's gone there and they're not mentally right, then do they pick him for the next test match? So good man manager, someone that can actually orchestrate how the team is going to play. But, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. When you get in the cricket field, I can't take the wickets for you.
No.
I can't score the runs.
The players still have to be accountable for their results.
The players have to be accountable, right?
Yeah, you can't blame the coach. And that's why we were going through Justin Langer's record before. It's the Australian cricket team's record while he's been coach. So, this whole, it's not like Wayne Bennett in the NRL. He owns the coaches own the result in AFL and NRL and all those sports. It's a different sport. Cricket, you're out there for 7 or 8 hours by yourself. The players and the captain have to run the team and own the result.
Yeah, look, it's interesting to see what's going to come out in the next day or so with Cricket Australia and how they, I guess, deal with all this situation.
What could they possibly say?
Well, I think they'll probably say they could have handled it differently and better.
But why are they saying that? They've had a year's notice this was going to happen.
They've had 12 months to get their ducks in a line. They haven't done it, which is...
If that's what they do say, that it's, I don't know. I mean, it'd be very, as you say, I can't wait to hear what they've got to say about it.
I'm very interested to see what they're going to say. So I guess in finishing, I think when Tim Payne took over and obviously took the team from what happened over in South Africa, has got the team back on the sort of winning ways. Although Tim Payne did a great job, what happened to him personally happened. We won't go there. But then Pat Cummins has taken over and it just looks like a better Cricket Australia side now. It's a wonderful, united cricket team on the field. That's the way it has to be. They need a coach now to supplement that. Yeah, Buzz, it's been a crazy one, hasn't it, with the whole Justin Langer saga. I guess in finishing, it's been pretty ordinary the way that Justin Langer, or I should say very ordinary, the way that Justin Langer has been handled. Atrocious. He should have had that send-off that he should have deserved after 4 years. Rightly or wrongly, he hasn't read the room. He should have understood that the writing was on the wall. That could have been his opportunity. He hung on probably too long. And now Cricket Australia didn't have the balls to put the bolt in the gun to fire him to say that this is the end point. Unfairly also for Pat Cummins to be put to a position where, a lot of people are saying you have to go out and speak because that wasn't the belief of the Australian cricket captain. And I think that the way that Cricket Australia has handled all this has been very, very ordinary to say. No one's won out of this.
No one's won. And Justin Langer deserved better.
Yep.
Regardless of the players' thoughts and how it ended up. It was embarrassing. And let's just hope now we can move forward and learn from the mistakes made here because the Australian cricket team's flying at the moment. But the good news is, Binga, no one's bigger than the game. The circus will roll on this Friday. 6:30 on Fox Cricket. Australia will take on Sri Lanka and hopefully it'll all be about the players again.
Well said. Let's look forward to Friday night. And as we always say, if you want to get involved, the email is the news.com.au, of course, or get involved in the WhatsApp group, and the link to that is in the episode notes. Buzzard, brilliant as always, mate. What do we say at the end?
Keep your damn chims up.
Your chims.
Chims! Chins!
Keep your chins up. See you next time.